Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Today we have Fabio Molle from Functional Tennis on. Fabio, welcome.
Great. Nice to see you again, Matt. Hope you are well, and thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, excited to talk to you today. And this is kind of a unique episode for us. So we're typically having pro doubles players or coaches on, but I like your products so much that I wanted to have you on anyways, and talk to people about the functional tennis saber and kind of the story behind it. But before we get to that, tell us your story. How did you get started in tennis, all the way to where you are now?
Yeah, like any young kid, I like to play. There's a little tennis club beside me, and I used to annoy my parents to join. And eventually, I got membership. Maybe I was about nine. I used to play a bit of soccer before that. So early days, played a lot of soccer. But I went to the tennis club and 10, 11, 12. Then I stopped playing tennis, got most serious into, stopped playing soccer, sorry, more serious into the tennis. And I used to play with a lot of guys and girls who were older than me. So I might doing 12, they were 15, 16. And that helped me get better really quickly as a young 12-year-old. I think I was, looking back, I was way behind already national level because kids start at 6, 7 even technique wise. And it takes like starting at getting serious about tennis when you're 11 and 12 is does make it a bit tougher. You do hear some good stories, but so anyway, so I just got to love it, played more and more. Then I got into some good squads around the country. My level went up even more. And then was I one of the top players in the country? No, but I enjoyed playing and was competitive. And I looked to go into the States after what you would call high school. We call it secondary school here, but I wasn't getting a good enough university. So decided to stay in Dublin and went to my local university, which is a great university, studied software engineering and played tennis on and off then in my 20s, played for the college team and sort of took up weightlifting then later on in my 20s and got serious into that. I just enjoyed that. And
Yeah.
then maybe hitting 30s again, decided to play more tennis and I stepped it up. And funny enough, in my university, the National Tennis Academy or it became the National Training Center. And so all the top guys and girls used to hit there. So I used to go over there and practice with them. And all of a sudden my level jumped again because I was hitting for like 2, 3 hours with these every day. And I was lucky with work. I worked in a family business. It was quite flexible. So I could go over there, do a few hours and which was amazing. And I played a few futures as well. Didn't do so good. I think the worst thing that happened to me was winning a few qualies matches in Ireland and thinking, oh, I can go do this in foreign countries. It was a lot harder than I thought. I got a bit lucky in Ireland, you could say. So, and Dublin is known to have, like, the Futures was just on here a few weeks ago, and every player would tell you it's the nicest futures in the country, in the world, sorry. They treat the
Mm,
players so well. The the clubs are beautiful and they really run a good show here because it's their top tier event. So, they put
yeah.
all their effort into it and the players get driven everywhere and it's really nice. But anyway, in my late 20s, because I sort of a software engineer background, my work though was in catering. My family owned catering business. I worked with them,
Mm,
but I still had I still want to do my own thing. And I actually set up, I had an app called My Tennis Tracker. And it was early on in the Apple days where coaches and players had an app where basically what our match journal and practice journal does now. I had that in an app way back then. Went for
hmm.
okay. We had people using it, and then I had issues with the developer. I stupidly had no backup of it, and our developer in the States said there was a thunderstorm. His machine blew up. There was no backup, and I was like, "How are we going to keep moving? We have to redevelop everything." And I was just like, "I'm moving on to the next thing." And that stage, I just had a Christmas jumper business. You again, they're called Christmas jumpers in Europe. In the States, they're called ugly Christmas sweaters. And I'd
Oh
set up
yeah.
an e-commerce store with a friend of mine. We had other friends who'd great fun uh, going out with these jumpers. And they were really hard to get. And myself and one of my best pals said, why don't we get our own made? So we got some designed. We set up an e-commerce store. Knew nothing about e-commerce store back then. And we started selling these. And we did pretty well for the first few years. Then we had a pop-up store. Like we were working with brands like Heineken and Mini. It was amazing. And ultimately it was a fad. It lasted a few years. We did well. We probably blew all the money we made on going out, nights out, having fun. That's every penny we made went on that. So looking back, that wasn't so good. But so I always had the interest in tennis. And a few years after that, I set up this Instagram account called Functional Tennis because in my 30s, I'm not sure the demographic of your listeners, but there's probably a lot of 30 and 40-year-olds where you
Hmm.
start picking up a lot of injuries. They just creep up out of nowhere, be it shoulder,
Yeah.
hips, and or your arm. And I just thought on Instagram, these early days in Instagram, well, 2016, there was a lot of people putting out good content that I thought was helping me. And I was like, why don't I try and initially I thought there's nowhere to save this on Instagram. And I thought, why don't I create an account and just save them there so I can reference them? And then I thought, oh, this could be a benefit to other people. And all these exercises, be it on court or off court, a lot was physios back then. There was some great physios and
Hmm.
it just grew from there. So that was the start of functional tennis, was just videos for me that I thought would help me and my body and allow me to play more tennis. And that's where functional tennis kicked off. There was never a plan to sell journals or sabers or like we're about to the million followers in a few weeks. So there was never any
Yeah, I
plans
saw
for
that.
that. It just snowballed into today. And of course, I love tennis. So it got me access to so many great players and people and getting to know people like you and other great people in the tennis world. It's been amazing what it's done for me. I've probably the only thing it hasn't been good for is my tennis. I'm probably playing less tennis now than ever,
Yeah,
which is
I'm the
I
same
always
way.
thought I play more tennis. So that's what the past it's really more COVID. I lost the run of things because I didn't play for 10, 12 months. And then I
Hmm.
came back and the body was just broken from day one. I haven't still got them. I've lost fitness. Shoulders give me problems. Back is giving me problems. And we've had three kids as well, roughly just before the kid came before COVID. So I'm not sure if it's related to that now, but
Yeah.
between COVID and, more sleepless nights, and I just haven't been able to get there. I still strive to get back there. And so, yeah, so luckily we don't have a YouTube account. We don't like, I don't say document my work or tennis journey because I'd be out of business if I did because the body is broken. There'd be no tennis to show. So yeah, so that's really the tennis journey. And along the way, we first said my first product I thought was going to be with this audience growing. I thought, okay, well, let's try and turn this into an e-commerce business, which I really enjoyed doing. And I thought, well, why don't I go back and release that app again? But it was quite expensive to develop an app. And I thought, well, why don't we try and get people off the phone and do a journal? So I started with the match journal, and then the practice journal came along after that. And in the meantime, I discovered this young kid called Jonas Fortek as a 12-year-old. There was a video that we posted multiple times and always did well. But in the video, he was using this wooden spoon and called a tennis pointer. And I was like, that's really interesting. That video is doing well. Let me try and source this tennis pointer. And like we sourced, it was made by a guy in the Czech Republic. And we managed to source, he actually had a distributor set up and we managed to find him. We got the product, we tested, I really liked it. And I put it out to the world and we sold out instantly. It was crazy, like. And
Hmm.
I thought, okay,
And
that's
explain to
interesting.
people what the tennis pointer is. So it's
Okay.
like
The tennis
the
pointer
shape of a
is
racket, kind of, but go
is a
ahead.
big wooden spoon. It's like a giant wooden spoon
Yeah.
with a head of it's like a 12 centimeter diameter head on it. So it's really hard to hit the ball. It's made of European red oak. There's a lot of copies which more or less put the Sabre out of business for me because they were copied everywhere. Everybody said they could do their own. And but it was made with this European red oak, which is quite expensive. It was cured, which means you could leave this in the rain. They would not bend, warp. And like we had some of the top pros smashing the ball with these. They didn't crack. People still have them from 2018, still or 2019, sorry, still use them now. And so the
Hmm.
quality was amazing. So it's a big giant wooden spoon, allows you to work on your contact point. And especially it's all about the feet, work the feet, work the feet so you could get into position. But we had a lot of competition, as in people, especially in Eastern Europe, started making their own. People in the States started making their own. Then they started appearing on Alibaba for half what we were charging for. Like they were on sale for less than what they were costing me. And I knew I'm
Jeez.
in
Yeah.
trouble here. Now, at this stage, we got a lot of reviews, we got feedback. It was always in my head, I'd love to do a racket version of this.
Mm.
And so the seeds were planted there to do the racket version. And so in the meantime, we launched a camera mount, which was kind of popular. It sort of made sense for our business that we'd give you a tool to record your tennis. So you could send us videos that we could share. So that's why we thought the camera mount was actually a good product for us. And then all these apps came out like Swing Vision. And so the camera mount worked really well. And in the meantime, I was trying to find a team to help me develop the Saber, we did contact like brands like Head and saying, look, we'd like to do this. Would you like to get involved with it? And they're like, not interested. They just had
Hmm.
no interest in training aids. They stick to match and practice rackets. That's all they want. And I think a lot of the other brands were like that as well. And so, yeah, it took me the longest thing was probably find a team to work with, as in a cosmetic designer and then actual technical designer, somebody who's worked developing rackets before. And that was it. So once I found them, eventually I spent 2 weeks working in Excel, doing prototypes, doing we'd cardboard cut. It was I had cardboard cutouts of prototypes. I remember we were living in another house at the time. There's a basement, and basically 2 weeks in the dark there I spent, and eventually I got to what I thought was happy in a cardboard shape, and we sent more or less an Excel sheet to China, and we had a great manufacturer over there. And they built some 3D models, and things were changed then. And then eventually some prototypes arrived, some things were changed, prototypes arrived, and they said, okay, this is really good. And then the cosmetic designer started working on it, and we had our first sample. And they said, okay, well, let's put in an order here. And I kind of
Hmm.
knew this would work because it was a better version than the wooden spoon. So it's not we were launching this to, we'd no audience, we'd nobody purchased something similar. So we kind of launched it to a good hot audience. And yeah, that was 2022. I started working in January 2021 was when I started working the Excel sheet. I probably spent all of 2020 looking for a team. 2021, yeah, I started working on it, and the product was released in pre-order in April 22. And so my dates, my years are messed up here. Yeah, pre-order 2022.
COVID messed
And
everybody up with their
yeah,
years.
and then yeah, they went on. I remember I was in launch it when I was in Greece, actually, at the IMG Future Stars. I have a tendency to go away in tournaments and launch products at tournaments. Bad idea. Don't recommend it. Puts you under a bit of stress. But launch it, and like yeah, we sold out pretty quickly, and then the next order came in.
Mhm.
These things take time to manufacture, to get production space. We're competing with big brands in the manufacturers. So, like we're a tiny, tiny brand, and they're like, no, you're pushed down the edge. So we're taking longer, and then flying them in is quite expensive. So we want to get them in on the sea freight. So yeah, so that was
Yeah.
that. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and it's been an exciting couple of years since we launched it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've got a lot of follow-up questions. I'm gonna make a note here of a few of them. So first off, before I ask about the saber itself, your story, you must know Dave O'Hare then?
Yes, Dave
Came
O'Hare is
from
a
I.
friend of mine. Had him on the
Okay, yeah.
podcast. He's been on the podcast multiple times. He's hosted 3 shows for me, actually. One of my favorite episodes has
Okay.
actually been hosted by him. But no, Dave was former Memphis, played doubles with Joe Salisbury, was number one player in college tennis. They played a bit in the pro
Right.
tour together, and then Dave unfortunately got injured playing football of all things in Ireland.
Yeah.
Hurt his ankle really badly and never really recovered from that. But I think it opened up doors to coach from him, and he still works with Joe and Rajiv now, which is amazing. And yeah, he's an all-around
Hmm.
really nice guy, great coach, and he's still young, which is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah, I've had him on the podcast a few times, and yeah, he's been really supportive of what I'm doing as well. And I actually grew up in Memphis where he played college,
Oh
which I
wow.
didn't know him then, but it's funny just how the tennis world can kind of overlap like that.
Yeah, speaking of
Um,
Memphis, sorry too,
yeah.
Connor Gannon, another friend of mine, is currently there now. And there's another guy
Okay.
called Charlie Barry there now, more specializing in doubles. Charlie's a good guy. And then we've another guy, Sean O'Neill, going over there next year. So Dave has introduced a lot of Irish players to the Memphis team.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, they just got a new facility that's supposed to be real nice. I still haven't been, but I've heard good things. So for the Saber, so for people listening, I've talked about your product before. I've shared it on the newsletter. It's, I don't use a lot of training aids. I'll set up targets, when I'm out there practicing. Recently, I haven't been playing a lot of tennis. I'm kind of like you, where I'm so in tennis all day, and then I get done, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to go to the court. I'd rather go to the gym. But um, yeah, I don't use a lot of training aids, but yours is one that I always do keep in my bag. And I feel like for me, it helps me with that contact point, especially my forehand volley is, I guess, the best use case for me. I tend to miss on like the bottom left part of the racket. And when I'm using a full tennis racket, I get away with it because it's just not on the sweet spot, but it'll still hit the strings, it'll still go over, and I'll dump a volley for a winner. And I just don't make any corrections because I still get away with it. But with your tennis saber, you do not get away with it. You have to hit the sweet spot, which is so nice. So the first time I used it, I went out and hit volleys for 5 or 10 minutes with it. And then I played a practice set and I hit my volley so much cleaner immediately. And I know that sounds like a fake paid testimonial or something, but I promise you it's not. Like that's literally what happened because it forces you to hit the sweet spot and find that contact point. But I'm curious about the development of it. You talked about being in the basement with making a cardboard cutout. So is this literally just like cardboard that you have in your basement and you're using scissors to cut out like a mold, or what does that
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, more or
Yeah.
less. Like we obviously we are shipping from that same office our previous products, so there's boxes coming in, and there's always cardboard lying around. But it was using, I worked off the design of the wooden spoon. I and then I worked off some of my favorite, like I use my Radical heavily because that's what racket I would have used a lot myself. So I based
Mhm.
it off those two. I'm just trying to find where the perfect sweet spot in the racket is and work around that. And also try and
Mhm.
gauge what did I think was hard enough, but also easy that you can use it. So with the wooden pointer, it was so hard to hit, you couldn't rally with it. It was more of a ball
Mhm.
feeding exercise, ball feeding, that it was really good for that. But if you wanted to rally with somebody with a normal racket, really hard. And if you want to rally
Mhm.
pointer v pointer, impossible. So my
Mhm.
goal with the Saber was, yeah, we do the ball feed stuff, but you can play a match versus somebody also using a full racket, or you can play somebody else with a Saber as well. So we want to make it hard, but not so hard that, every second or third shot was a shank. So
Mhm.
I was trying to find a happy medium. That's why our head size is 37 square inches. I thought that just worked perfectly. So it took a while of just getting a feel and just figuring that out took a bit of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And yeah, and also we're working on racket thickness as well, working on different shapes of the frame, and there's a lot of other measurements that go into it.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's really that was really important just to get that right mix. So you go out and hit balls up. We've had coaches who play matches, they play league matches with it. I've had my
Yeah.
own Saber tournaments here. I know other clubs have had Saber tournaments where they might do Champions Breakers. And yeah, and I've seen pros hit Saber on Saber also.
Yeah. I think on your website, I don't know if it's still there, but I remember seeing a while back some video of Djokovic hitting with it, maybe from
Yeah,
the
so
baseline.
yeah, funny you were saying earlier you like to keep it in your bag. Somebody had sent me a photo of Djokovic with the saber in his bag. You could see it hanging out, which is quite interesting. But in
Yeah.
that Wimbledon, I got another phone call. A friend of mine rings. Goes, Fabio, Djokovic using a saber. It was on the TV, and it was
Yeah.
one of these shots that BBC had, like what's going on in Wimbledon. I had Novak was playing with his kid, and Novak was using the saber on one of the practice courts in Wimbledon. So, yeah, Novak has been great. I remember I actually gave him the saber in Roland Garros. I had no intention to give him a saber at all. Just wasn't on my radar. I know
Yeah.
I met him with our journals. He wouldn't say endorsed, but he talked about our journals, which was amazing. I met him and he knew what it was. He knew what we were. But I was in Roland Garros 2 years, was it? Yeah, 2 years now. And he was playing Alcaraz. They had a closed session. And I was with Suwon Kwan, just helping him out with a few things. So I was part of his team. And it meant I'd also access to all the courts.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, Djokovic is playing Alcaraz. Let me run in. It was the end of the session. And I got filmed some amazing points. The place was empty. There was probably like, I'd say 8 to 10 people there max. And it
Yeah.
was crazy. Anyway, Novak's walking out. And I'm like, wait, let me give Novak a saber. I had some with me because I never know when I might need them. But still, this wasn't the
Y-
plan. And so
Yeah.
Novak's walking out where you walk onto the court. He's walking out. I run down there and Novak walks through the door. I tap him on his back and he doesn't turn around. I'm like, "Oh, he probably thinks I'm a fan." And I'm like, "Well, there's no fans allowed here, so it can't be." And I tapped him again. He turned around and goes, "Hey, how are you?" So he knew me. And I was like, "Look, Novak, I have a gift for you here." And he was like, "Oh, I've seen that on Instagram, blah, blah, blah." I was like, "Here you go. That's for you." And I then was like, "Yeah, catch you soon." And it was a really short conversation. And then it appeared at Wimbledon then a couple of months later,
Yeah,
which was
that's a
amazing. So yeah, so it doesn't get much better than that for me. And then
yeah.
seeing it in his hands. But no, Novak's been great. Like I know he gets a lot of bad press, but I've met him a few times now at some ASICS events and randomly meeting him, and he's been super nice.
Hmm. Who are some of the doubles players that use the
So
saber?
obviously, Dave O'Hare, like you mentioned, has one, and
Hmm.
he's a couple of them now at this stage. But Joe Salisbury carries one. He used it for volleys for strike, and I've seen multiple videos of that.
Hmm.
Doubles guys, Heliovaara bought one from our
Hmm.
website.
He just won
Recently,
Wimbledon. Yeah.
just before, and he bought one about a year and a half ago. Uh, and Henry Patton, funny enough, after he won Wimbledon, somebody sent me a video, and I was like, "Oh, Fab, this video, I hadn't sent it to you yet." During Queens, he was using one in Queens, which was amazing. He won Wimbledon with
That's
Helio.
so
I was
good.
like, "That's great." I've seen Jamie Murray hit one, Bopana has one. Uh, there's yeah, the doubles. They're the doubles guys I can think off the top of my head who have them. But there's definitely Lloyd Glasspool. I've seen videos of him hitting with it in Wimbledon,
Yeah.
and yeah, all of them I've seen doing volley stuff with it. It's been absolutely amazing. And then I'm not sure if you want me to name the singles guys. There's been plenty. There's been
Yeah.
like Stanford Wawrinka. He was the first, obviously with Novak. Recently, I just saw a video yesterday of Pavel Kotov, who I'm not sure his rank. Is he top 30? I'm not sure his exact
I,
ranking.
I I don't know.
He, you know the doubles
Out
guy. Yeah,
singles is
singles.
outside of my
Yeah.
my scope.
Karatsev used to use a
Yeah.
wooden spoon and he wanted a saber. He uses those training aids. Hercats love it. His coach had to tell him to stop using it because he was using it too much. I've seen Cam Norrie strike with one, upcoming French player Gabriel Debreu, uh, Jeannie Bouchard's been striking with one, Marta
Hmm.
Kostiuk, Sue Kwan, and Arthur Ferry has one. I've seen a picture of Taylor Fritz with one in his hands, Cat McNally.
Yeah.
Like they're the ones I know of. There's probably some I'm
Yeah.
forgetting of, but
There's
and there's
there's
probably a
probably
load
more
more.
that you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
for
it's pretty
sure.
impressive. These guys use it or have it or they have it in their bag. They probably don't use it all the time, but sometimes they want to
Hmm.
zone in on something and they'll take it out and try and dial in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such I mean it just speaks to the quality of the product and like I feel like for club players, which is most of our audience listening today, um a lot of us struggle with like finding that sweet spot, right? Like and I think that's maybe like the most important thing for a club level player to learn is like it's great to learn how to hit with top spin or how to learn how to hit harder and increase your racket head speed or whatever it is. But if you don't find the sweet spot, like everything else is going to be more difficult. But if you can find that sweet spot, it's going to be a lot easier. I'm curious what sorts of like doubles clinics or are there any specific drills that you've seen done with the saber outside of kind of what I talked about a little bit earlier? I like to just volley with it with my opponent back at the baseline and I'll just volley back to them. But is there any other kind of specific drills for doubles that you've seen done with it?
Just before I answer that, I think yeah, a lot of it comes to like figuring out the contact point. Sometimes you've got to work on the contact point, just
Mm,
understanding where it is. And we've been told many times, obviously, people use it as a focus tool. Somebody has to dial in, really concentrate on what they're doing. But it comes down to the feet. And if the feet aren't moving, you might
mm,
compensate a few times for the contact point, but then unforced errors start happening, and be it your racket or be it a saber. So it really is a footwork tool. You have to work your feet so hard, get in position all the time so you can rotate properly, so you can strike the ball properly in the right place. So we've
mm,
been told by so many people about that. So I see it heavily as a footwork tool now. And never really, even at the start, didn't really occur to me with a wooden spoon as much, but it started
yeah.
appearing more and more there. And even with the saber, I sort of reset it a little bit, and then we see footwork coming out a lot more. So
Mm,
that's what sort of tool. Regarding drills, I sort of famously don't give drills
mm,
for a few reasons. One, every coach has their own way of doing things.
Yeah.
No, I find, and a lot of coaches don't like what other coaches do as well. So I never wanted to put out drills and say, and I worked with coaches to do drills, but we decided not to put them out there. We just said, look, we let people figure out what to do with it, how to figure it out themselves. Because so many times a coach tells a player to buy one, or a player works with a coach, and most of the time you just work on the same thing you work with a normal racket. You just substitute it in for the saber. It just makes it harder. It makes you work harder. That's why you go back to a normal racket. It's easier. So,
Hmm.
is there any specific drills that I recommend? Not really. I just recommend do what you normally do when you're working on a specific stroke or what it is, and just sub in the saber. You don't want to complicate it too much. And we
Hmm.
let coaches go out there, do their own thing, enjoying it. We try and be not opinionated. I think that's
Yeah.
been good for us not to be, because actually don't think we may have even grown on Instagram as much if we were heavily opinionated. I know places like Twitter, you have to be opinionated out there with, the more wrong you are, the better it is for you grow more. But I just
Yeah.
thought
You
for
get more
Instagram,
reactions. Yeah.
I just wanted to put out thoughts out there and see what people come back with.
Mm. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, the idea that it's a footwork tool is interesting. I haven't heard that until literally you're just telling me now. But I think that makes a ton of sense. And then by like contact point to clarify for people, um, I imagine you mean like how your body is spatially in relationship to the ball. So you can make contact a little bit later. You can make contact out in front more. You've got to find that right contact point. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. Just understand where exactly you should be hitting the ball. And again,
Hmm.
you're working with your coach to find what's for you. Like obviously the famous the Federer is a straight arm. Most players are a little bent arm, but it's just out in
Hmm.
front of you and just helping you find with the small head, you have to find where it is exactly,
Yeah.
or else you're going to shank the ball. And yeah, we see many players, maybe lower level, hit the ball very close to their body. I'm still a little bit guilty of that, where you get a bit lazy and you're hitting the ball close to your body. You're losing a lot of power, and I think you're also a bit less consistent. Maybe a coach can correct me on that, but I feel you're definitely losing power, and you're going to break down a bit more.
Hmm. Interesting. So I want to move on to your podcast. So the Functional Tennis Podcast. We recorded an episode recently and talked about doubles in the Olympics, but you've had a ton of different guests on from the tour. What are some of the best lessons that you've learned from the podcast? Either doubles lessons or even mental lessons as well.
It's been a lot of, I think we were plus 230 guests now. I'm not sure many you've had, but you definitely start forgetting some of the earlier
Yeah,
ones.
no, I do.
Yeah,
100%.
you and sometimes like, wait, if I had them on we recently Conor Ireland on the podcast. I'm not sure if you know Conor Ireland. He's X2 NCAA in the States. He played for Berkeley. Then he went on to be Ireland's number one. He got to ranking about 130 and great player. But he recently released a book called Racket, and it talks about the struggles of playing tennis from early days. Great book, by the way. I normally don't
Hmm.
read books that quick, and 2 days, two flights had it read. But anyway, I was asking him, Connor, have you been on this podcast before? I can't remember. And he had been on it before. I was like, oh God. But more recently, actually, well, it wasn't me who hosted the podcast. The episode was Dave O'Hare, and he had Brad Stein on, and like Brad Stein had some good points. Like basically, he said like you can't bullshit tennis players. If you want to be a
Mm.
good coach, you got to know your stuff. Like they will see through your crap, and they even like some Matt Little we had in the podcast talks about when he goes to Andy Murray, and I've heard this mentioned through other people working with top pros when you go with something, you better have facts to back it up
Mm.
because they will not do anything unless you're giving them the exact reason why and the benefits. So it
Yeah.
just means, when you're working with something, don't just pick something up off the internet and say, oh, let's do that today. You got to really research and see what are the benefits of it. And so that I've heard, sometimes you hear patterns through, I'm sure you've heard them yourself, where, people working with top players, they all sort of the same mind, you got to treat them the same way. You got to, with respect, obviously, but also know your stuff, or else you're going to be out of a job pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah, I like
Like,
that having the facts to back it up. It's something that I'm like, when I did scouting for the Olympics or when I'm working with a pro player, I'm always like before I send them a scouting report or an assessment report of their game, I like the last thing I do is double check like all of my claims that could be opinionated, and I make sure I have actual data to back it up. And sometimes I catch myself doing that because I'm getting a little bit lazy and I'll say like, "Oh, you need to be serving down the tee more often because of your partner's not able to get involved at the net anymore." And that's something that like a lot of coaches just say, right? It's better to serve down the tee because it
Yeah.
takes away the angles. But I always double check those things to make sure I actually have the data. And when I do catch myself, I it's a really good reminder of like, okay, like stay on this because if you start getting lazy, then you're not providing as much value and they are going to see through it for sure.
Yeah, the top guys will definitely see through it. But yeah, so I think if you somebody's going to listen to an episode, the Brad Stein one is really out there, and
Right, Stein.
it's topical and but it's true. So it's really good, really good. With somebody like Pablo Andlahar on the podcast, who was really open and transparent about how hard it is for junior tennis players and what's committed from the parents and from the kid, and how one day they have to decide, I'm doing this, I'm going all in, and they have to change their obviously their mindset, their life, and they got to know what they have to give up, their friends and parties and whatnot. Like it just shows how hard, like, to get on the road to being a top tennis player with no guarantees. You have to give up so much.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you make it, the rewards are great. So he just gives a really good insight into that, into what it takes, which is really good. Like I said, the Conan Island one's really interesting. Just getting his insight from a junior. We did push. I have been maybe the last year pushing the junior angle a lot more. Like parents, we had like Cinzia Jovinko, who is her child. She's two kids who are really, really good. And it just gives insight into their career, her struggles growing up, having to move country, help out in the academy, and just you just learn all the time. Every podcast is episode is slightly different, and
Yeah.
you're picking up new things. So yeah, sometimes people ask me what's the best one. That changes from time to time. Like,
Yeah, for sure. Um, so I wanted to talk a little bit about doubles. So we chatted very briefly before the show. Typically, I end with how can we make doubles more popular, but since you live in Europe and you're so involved in tennis in Europe, I'm always curious about the differences between doubles in Europe and doubles in the States. So we can talk about it maybe from an adult club level player um, perspective, as well as a pro perspective. I know a lot of players I talk to say, Indian Wells is one of the best attended tournaments for the doubles courts. Um, I know some countries in Europe love to attend the doubles matches and others don't as much. Like I think the Italian Open, unless it's two Italians on the court, like most pros I talk to, like they don't get a lot of fans at their matches there. So let's start with, I guess, the adult club level player. Um,
oh,
how common is doubles at that level versus singles?
it's extremely common
Okay.
because as a club level player, obviously, one, it's a bit more it's recreational, a bit more fun playing with your friends, and
Hmm.
I think it works well. Two, most leagues we hear, like, we've winter league, summer league, like senior league, floodlit league. They all involve some sort of doubles. Some are doubles only, some are half doubles, half singles. So, and as you
Okay.
get older, there's more and more doubles. So doubles is really, really important. And I think a lot of times people don't work on these skills enough. But
Yeah.
I do think we find, like, some of my friends who would have went to scholarship in the States, they're just so much better doubles players than players who don't go to the States. So whether
Hmm.
you're a great club level player, whether you're a great national player that decided to quit tennis, to not go pro, and then there's those that go to the States and then they may quit after they go to the States. And then there's the pros, the 18-year-old who goes pro. Like, the kids who go to the States and do their scholarships and great universities always come back great doubles players. Like, I love playing
Yeah.
doubles with them. They tell you what to
Hmm.
do, where to stand. You just execute on what they say. So the skills that they learn in college tennis is amazing for doubles, which I'm always excited to play with somebody who's played college tennis.
Yeah.
And the guys who go straight to tour don't necessarily be good double. They're still lost in the alleys, like I
Hmm.
find. And even
Yeah.
the girls,
Well, you see, like if you look at like the top 50 on the men's and women's side in doubles, a lot of them played college, a ton, like way
yeah,
more than singles, obviously.
they definitely learn a great skill set by doing that. And I think that then more recreational level by being a great doubles player. I don't think I am, by the way, and I think I miss out on opportunities by being a great doubles player. You're going to win more matches. You're selected for higher teams. I think if you can work on those skills, there's definitely a lot of opportunity. But yes, doubles is played a lot, and I can't. I know in the UK there's a lot of doubles as well, but I can't speak for Europe. But I can't see why there's not a lot of doubles either at the club level.
Hmm. There was somebody I talked to like probably a year or two ago who lived in Germany, and they said they played like adult, it was like recreational but competitive and like decently high level, but not like they were never pro or anything like that. And they were on these club teams where they would play in this league and they'd play these matches. And I don't remember the exact number, but they played mostly singles. It was like maybe five singles matches and then two doubles matches or something like that. And then it was like best of seven overall.
Mm.
In the States here, the most common league format is three doubles matches. So you have six players playing doubles and then two singles matches. And then the higher or the older you get, they're starting to just filter out the singles. So they've got a lot of leagues that are three doubles matches, so six doubles players, and you only play one singles match, which is four total matches. And then they do it like, if you split 2-2, you win. Whoever has the most sets wins, or whoever has the most
Okay.
games, or whatever. What's the ratio on most of y'all's leagues?
Well, no, sir, just to say, like let's say the lower class leagues where older people would play,
Uh-huh.
normally they tend to have the older people play the doubles. And then if there's two or three singles, also they get in younger kids for that. That
Yeah,
tends to
yeah,
happen a lot. But
yeah.
so what do you mean by your question? What's the ratio?
So are most of the leagues like three doubles matches and two
So
singles matches or
I'll
something
tell you
else?
now. So starting now in September, there's a senior league. That's
Uh-huh.
three doubles, six on a team. There's also a thing called Floodlit League, and that's how many's on a team? There's five on a team, or there's three. I think sorry, there's four in a team, and it's drawn on the night whether you play one of two singles or doubles.
Okay.
It's a random. Then in January, February, there's Winter League. That's three doubles. And then in Summer League, there is the big one. Sorry, in summer is Summer League where there's three singles and two doubles. That
Hmm.
used to be years ago. That used to be six singles and three doubles. You'd play singles and then doubles first. But I think they thought it was taking too much time, so they stopped it. So now you'd have seven on that team with the four doubles and three singles, and that's it. So you can see it's by
Yeah,
being
that's
good at
a lot of doubles.
doubles, you're going to go far.
Hmm. So what about at a pro level? I know you attend some pro tournaments in Europe. What's your perspective on like the doubles crowds in Europe? Is it true what I'm saying? Like the attendance is a little bit lower in most of the European tournaments, or
Yeah,
how do you feel?
I haven't been to every term, but the ones I don't, I don't really go to them myself. I'm there normally to
Yeah.
work, and so I'm there all day getting content. And I honestly tend to go there before the tournament starts. So I'll go practice the few days before they practice, so I can get practice content all day. And then when
Mm.
the matches start, it's harder to get in the right place in the court. So I don't get content, so I tend to leave. But if I stay, normally the doubles hasn't even started because they start a day or two later. So
Yeah,
most
that's
times I
right.
go to tournament, I don't watch doubles, nor do I watch singles. I may get the first day of singles, and my flight is usually like, let's say it starts the Monday, my flight could be Monday night, so I get a bit of singles and then I leave or Sunday. And so I can't answer that. But in general, the pro level, I've watched enough TV to know there's a lot less there's a lot less people watch doubles, which is unfortunate. I
Hmm.
did enjoy the Olympics where obviously the singles guys were only playing best of three sets, so that allowed them to play doubles. And I think that's an interesting strategy where if slams were reduced, you'd like to think they play more doubles, and
Hmm.
which you do get like you do get more singles guys playing doubles at the maybe not the Masters, well, some Masters events because
Some in the Masters for sure.
the doubles guys aren't happy about that where you've a ranking of 30 and you may not get into the main draw, which can
Yeah.
be terrible. Like, uh,
And
so
they withdraw in like the second round, right?
I
Like
know
a lot of
it's
the singles guys.
yeah. I think that's absolutely terrible. And to be
Hmm.
like the 30th ranked, I'm not sure the exact number, but to be the 30th best in the world at your sport, at doubles, and not to get into the main draw, I think is a joke, by the way.
Hmm.
So, yeah. So I think having more singles players is good for the, we'll get more people watching it. But is it good for the doubles guys who that's their bread and butter? I don't think so.
Yeah.
You got to
Yeah,
be
there
careful they don't complain too much.
it's a yeah, it's a good point. I think you see more of the singles players playing at the majors on the women's side. I think because it's 2 out of 3 in singles, right? So if the men did switch to 2 out of 3, which I don't know. I mean, that's a different debate if you like best of 5 or whatever. But if they did, I would imagine more of them uh would play doubles. So, Fabio, this has been a lot of fun. Any final requests or comments for the audience, for people listening? We'll link to everything in the show notes, of course. We'll link to the Saber as well as some of your other products. Any final requests or comments, though?
No, if there are any questions regarding the functional tennis tape, to let me know. Some people, the biggest question we get usually, with two questions we get is one, do we ship
Mhm.
worldwide? Yes, we do. We can ship quickly to the States, and there's no import duties or anything because you're very generous, your government over there. They allow you guys to import $800 a day without any extra VATs, taxes, or duties, which is amazing for me as a business running from Dublin, Ireland. That's amazing shipping into the States. And also, does it come strong? That is the biggest question we get. And yes, the
Hmm.
Saber arrives strong. We always thought it would never have worked if the Saber arrived to people unstrung because one, they might struggle to find somebody to string it. They may not have a usual stringer for some recreational players. So it arrives strong, ready to go. And it can be easily strung by we videos on our website for all that. So they're just the main concerns. But any questions, they can reach out to me directly on Functional Tennis Instagram account. I answer all the questions there.
Awesome, Fabio. Well, thanks a ton for coming on again, and thanks everyone for listening. I'll link to everything in the show notes, and I will talk to you all soon.
Thanks, Will. Pleasure being on.